Pakistan, Vietnam. Hi, Cynthia. A Malaysian and Paraguay.
Thailand.
Yeah, Thailand. Yes, Elsie, we definitely are. From all over. Bangkok. Yes, thank you so much for joining in. We're right at the hour, so let's just wait a couple more minutes just to wait for more folks to come in, and then we're going to get started. And as you're joining, you might be seeing a poll up on your screen. We would love to hear if you have experience using Our World at your school, in your classroom. Please let us know. So I'm going to get started because we do have a lot of relevant content to hear about this today. And so I'm officially going to welcome everybody to today's webinar session, Our World for Young Learners of English, Engagement, Effectiveness, and Ease of Use. The session today is being presented by a wonderful team that we have today that you can see up there on the screen. So we have our World Series editors, Dr. Joan Kang Shin and Dr. Jodi Crandall. They are here with us today, along with the Our World publisher, Charisse Rohr, who's here with us as well, joined by our executive editor, Micah White. So yes, this is our dream team today, right, for this webinar session. But before we get started and I hand over to them, I would love to thank you for joining us today from all over the world. My name is Fernanda de Oliveira. I'm a product marketing manager for the Very Young Learners and Teens programs at National Geographic Learning. And I'm very excited today because we're going to hear all about a recent study that explored the efficacy of Our World for young learners of English. But before we get started, I would like to take a minute to go over some of the functionality of the webinar platform. I know we're all used to it by now, but it's always worth a reminder. So at the bottom, you will see a Q&A button. So please use this to ask the presenter or the host questions. We will do our best to answer questions throughout the session as they come in, but we will have a dedicated time at the end of the session to go through them as well. Okay, so make sure you ask and interact. We always love the interactions and comments and questions at the chat box, so please keep them coming. Finally, we'll be sending along a certificate of attendance and a recording of the session within 5 business days of the webinar. So stay tuned for that. And without further ado, I'm handing over to Charisse and our great team of speakers.
Well, thank you all for joining. And I see the results of the poll just popped up on my screen. I'm seeing about 30% of people saying that they are or have used Our World, and about 50, I'm so blind today with my old glasses, 56% said no, and 14% weren't sure if they were using Our World. So we are prepared to talk to both users and people who are not familiar with the series today, and we're excited to share with you the results of this efficacy study and research that we've done into the series. So thank you again for joining us, and we're going to jump right in. Micah?
I just want to quickly introduce myself. I'm Michael White. As Faye mentioned, I'm the executive editor, and I'm very happy to be here with you today. And I look forward to sharing some of the results of our study with you in a few moments.
Hi, I'm Jodi Crandall, and I'm one of the editors of the series of Our World.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joan Kang Shin, and I'm one of the other series editors of Our World. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks. Joan and I are very excited to be with you today to share some of the information from some of the research we've done. You'll be hearing from a number of teachers, administrators, parents, and students. You'll be seeing some of the quotes from what we've heard, what they're saying about the second edition of Our World. For those of you, though, who may not be familiar with Our World, we're going to take some time at the beginning to look at some of the features of this series for young learners. As the name indicates, Our World does more than just teach English. It also expands students' knowledge of the world through fascinating and challenging topics from history, from science, and from other content areas. And these are introduced first through amazing photos, and then they're practiced through a number of activities, including songs and grammar activities. And at the end, they demonstrate what they've learned about that content through English as they indicate what they have learned in developing those projects. They also have a chance during the unit to practice with songs and also to think about their own world in terms of what they're reading and what they're learning about. In every unit, students learn more about the world, about natural wonders, about animals, families, and cultures, about the kinds of work that people do. And with the National Geographic explorers that are in the units, they can expand those ideas and think about what they might be able to do, what the contributions they could make. Even grammar activities provide interesting content, as you'll see. Through photos, readings, activities focused on real-world content, our young learners are inspired and motivated, not only to learn English, but also to gain much more knowledge about the world and the possibilities that it offers them.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the video program. So the Our World video program has been created with National Geographic for young learners of English. These videos were shot in the National Geographic studios in Washington, D.C., using carefully selected hosts, including everyone's favorite, Freddie the Frog. I don't know if you guys know Freddie the Frog, but he's awesome, and kids love learning from him. I actually had the privilege of being in the studio during some of the filming of the video program, and it was amazing to see Our World being filmed in National Geographic studios. The puppeteer for Freddie was especially talented and brought our mascot to life. So there are short videos for every lesson in Our World. They're available on the lesson planner DVD, the classroom presentation tool, and all of which is fully integrated with the student book and other classroom teaching materials. And this makes it easy for teachers to select and use parts of the video program they need. There is also a robust PD video library that is specifically for teachers of Our World. And these PD videos were a labor of love since I worked on the scripts and as the host, but also to even go to some classrooms to film teachers using Our World. So this is a special feature I wanted to mention of Our World that we created to support teachers. All right, and next, so who here loves grammar? Of course, it's so important to ground grammar in reality with natural examples of real world language and lots of practice in developmentally appropriate ways. Our approach in Our World is to present grammar in depth and in context. There's a lot of grammar support in Our World with 2 grammar lessons per student book unit. grammar practice in the workbooks, separate grammar workbooks, practice in our online practice, practice in the classroom presentation tool, as well as grammar in-depth information in the lesson planner. So all the support you need for all of those grammar lovers out there, but presenting grammar in a way that is developmentally appropriate. And the next slide, you'll see we're also committed to providing a variety of opportunities for young learners to learn to read and also to read to learn. So as we know, when you read more, you know more. We not only have reading lessons, but also extended readings every 3 units and unit readers that provide both fiction and nonfiction readings. And we also incorporate storytelling and additional activities to expand vocabulary and practice language in context. And next, I pass it over to you, Jodi.
Thanks, Joan. As I indicated earlier, every unit ends with a project, and this is a wonderful opportunity for students to be able to take what they have learned throughout the unit and demonstrate it through this project. Sometimes those projects are done individually, sometimes they're done by the whole class, sometimes they're done in pairs, and they're a variety. I think there must be 20, 30, 40 different kinds of projects in the series. Everything from posters to actually creating puppets or masks for celebrations or even robots. But here's a really interesting one, which was a unit on transportation. And this is a fairly early level in which students are asked what's their favorite transportation and how they get to school. And they have a chance then to draw that favorite transportation. And then as a class, they create a bar graph, which is something wonderful for their beginning to understanding of the mathematics of it. But in this case, they actually use pictures that they have drawn. And then at the end, they have a chance now to think about all that they have learned during that unit, and then to actually complete that now I can, which indicates that they've identified different kinds of transportation, described ways of traveling, and actually learned to compare and contrast. I've watched a number of students doing these projects, and they are fascinated by them. And one of the nice things right now, since so many of you are teaching either virtually or hybrid, these projects can be done at home, because if you notice, we have all of the directions there that are at this level are totally illustrated. And so they can be done even with their parents' help, bringing that classroom into the home and also the home back to the classroom. The series also contains a number of books that are separate to help students learn the letters of the alphabet, which is in the ABC book. And in there, they also learn about numbers, they learn shapes, they also learn some of the basic simple words of English. And then there are 3 books that are focused specifically on phonics, on the relationships between the sounds and the spellings. And what's nice about these, as you'll see a little later, but also here, they're very much fun. They're not boring as so many phonics books are. Instead, they have games. They have opportunities for students to use the phonics, the sounds that are under discussion in actually chanting. And also, there are some flashcards for the sounds of English that teachers can use in the classroom. So all in all, a very nice way of helping students to understand English spelling, which we all know is extremely difficult. It doesn't, sometimes we can't believe how things are spelled, nor can we believe that the same word spelled the same way could have 2 different kinds of pronunciations. Yeah, and then throughout the series, teachers have access to an exam view assessment suite, which enables them to create using the basics that are there, but also being able to customize or adapt them. Everything from a placement test to quizzes for each unit to mastery tests. There are 3 of those for each unit, and to the final exams, which are now makes the whole act of having to create quizzes and tests so much easier. So teachers have access to this on a regular basis. And so Joan, take it away.
All right, so here I'm just going to give you a little snapshot of what a unit looks like in our world. And so you can see here kind of the overview of the unit, but I'm going to go in a little bit of detail. So in the next slide, you'll see that we start every single unit in our student book with a unit opener. There's always a really amazing high impact photo that can really encourage students to get into the content of the unit. And often these high impact photos are from National Geographic. And so you'll see some more examples later, but they really start out the unit with something of interest for your learners. And so in the unit opener, though, also there are the unit goals. There's always a goal setting activity, and these are introduced with these photos to encourage speaking and discussion about the thematic unit. And then after that, there's our first introduction to vocabulary for the unit. So in vocabulary 1, here you see that target vocabulary is presented in meaningful context to help students build fluency and confidence to discuss relevant real-world topics in English. So here we're integrating cross-curricular topics and helping our young learners be able to communicate about them. Then the next page, we present a song. And we'll give you an example of that, but the songs are such a wonderful way to engage young learners in language. And so in our world, we have all original songs that support the unit theme. They model natural rhythm and intonation and incorporate the target vocabulary and grammar. It's such a developmentally appropriate way to approach language instruction. And then we present the first bit of grammar. So grammar 1 is on the next 2-page spread. And here we're presenting this target grammar and getting students to practice it in context. And so we always have natural examples of real world language and opportunities for real communication using all 4 language skills. And then next, you will see that then we have our second vocabulary presentation and our second grammar presentation. And these are ones that really help students to go more deeply into the theme of the unit. And there's a fun sticker activity and some communicative grammar games because young learners love to have fun in the classroom. And so we include that for teachers to use. Then we have the reading. And we have real world readings. We incorporate infographics, right? Because communication is multimodal in the 21st century. In addition, we have these weird but true facts that come from National Geographic and encourage students to use graphic organizers, which help them to comprehend the readings and gain comprehension from what's in the text. And in addition, these help students to learn language across the content areas. So our readings can hit on science, nature, history, art, culture, music, sports, the gamut. And so we pull it all together in a reading. And then every single unit has a value or a missions page where we connect to the values of National Geographic and help learners to be able to communicate more related to these values that will connect them to real world issues and real world problems that National Geographic explorers are trying to make an impact with. And so here you can see that to encourage communication levels 1 to 3, we have think, pair, share routines to help them to understand these universally recognized values. And then in levels 4 and 6, the upper levels, we look at the missions of National Geographic explorers. And then we have writing, because we know we have to work on listening, speaking, reading, and writing with our young learners. And so we introduce learners to different genre, different writing types. And we always provide a model and then the scaffolding for students to be able to write and also opportunities for them to share their work. And then finally, the projects page, because we want our young learners to be engaged in the language, again, in context, but something that they can create. And so there's always a project that will encourage them to communicate using the language they've learned. And also you'll see at the top, there's the Now I Can statement that helps them to assess themselves and how they did with the unit objectives, and helps them reflect on, right, what have they learned and are they able to accomplish those language objectives that we've set out from the beginning. So that, in a nutshell, is a unit of our world. And now I would like to have my colleague Charisse share what the research has said in the efficacy study. Charisse. I think you're muted. Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks, Joan. At National Geographic Learning, when we do new editions, we do a lot of research. We survey thousands of teachers. We do one-on-one interviews with teachers and administrators. We hold focus groups. We do online forums. We visit classrooms, and all of it's focused on how can we improve this series, right? We're looking for ways to make those materials more engaging, more effective, and easier to use. So, for example, with Our World First Edition, when we were starting to plan it, we were a little worried about the volcano unit. While I love science, I love volcanoes, we weren't sure that we hadn't gone a little too far into the academic language. So that's one of the things we asked about. You know, what are the topics that students and teachers find engaging and effective? What do the students really want to learn? And we heard loud and clear, do not change the volcano unit. The students love it. So we kept the volcano unit, but we also heard ways that we could improve the series, not just what people love. Things like we needed to improve the navigation through the unit. It could be better to make it easier for the teachers. So we learned a lot from Our World research, but we also decided in this case to invest in an efficacy study done by a third-party organization. And we'd heard many times anecdotally over and over through the years that the first edition of Our World was engaging. We heard it from the teachers, from administrators, that the methodology was strong, it was effective. We did hear that it was easier for some teachers than others to use. And so we wanted to see, based on the research, the changes that we've done, did we in fact meet the goals that we'd set for ourselves? And that's why we hired this organization. And the organization, there you go, good job. The organization we decided to hire was SEG Measurement, and we chose them because of their reputation. And it was a real bonus for us that it's also a woman-owned company, because inclusion and diversity are really important, both in our materials and how we create and support them. So we felt like it was a win all the way around to go with a really respected organization that also brought that level of diversity and inclusion for us. And I'd like Micah to actually walk us through the research that they've done for us.
Great, thank you, Charisse. Can we go to the next slide, please? So SEG Measurement approached this research with one high-level overarching question, and that question was, is National Geographic Learning's Our World, second edition, is it effective? Now that's a big question, and so to answer that question, they asked many other guiding questions to teachers and administrators, and also students and parents. And some of these questions included, is the program effective in developing students' English language skills? That's a critical question you want to know. How effective are specific materials or tools and activities in developing those English language skills? Is it easy to use? Is it organized well? And there were many other questions, as you can see here. So SEG Measurement's goal with this research study really was to get a well-rounded understanding of the program's efficacy. And when we say efficacy, we mean, is it meeting the needs and is it meeting the goals of teachers and students, of users of the program? So To learn the answers to the research questions I just mentioned, SEG Measurement conducted a study from June to December of last year, 2021. And throughout this time, they worked with various institutions that used Our World Second Edition in multiple countries. And their approach to research involved surveys and one-to-one interviews of teachers and administrators who use the program, as well as one-to-one interviews of parents and students, which was really great because it's not very often that we get to hear directly from parents and students. So this was a really important part of the research study. The research plan was built so that teachers and admins and parents and students could provide their feedback on the program in many different ways, including through multiple choice questions. They could assign ratings to particular aspects of Our World, and they could also provide open-ended feedback so they could share their thoughts freely on many different areas. So what did we learn from this research? Well, here are a few highlights that really stood out to us. First, we were very happy to learn that 100% of teachers and administrators said that they definitely or probably would use Our World in the future. And the fact that every single respondent said this is, of course, very wonderful, but it also lets us know strongly that Our World is meeting the needs of educators and their students. Next, 93% of teachers strongly agreed that their students were improving their English language skills because of the program. And overall, 83% of parents and 82% of teachers thought that Our World was a very effective English language learning program. Now let's look at a little bit more detailed view of the research. We were interested in learning how effective Our World was in particular skill areas. So SEG Measurement asked teachers to rank the effectiveness of each skill area on a scale from 0, which is a very poor rating, to 5, which is perfect. And as you can see, the mean teacher rating was quite high for each skill area, with vocabulary, grammar, and speaking coming in with the highest marks. Next, please. Thank you. And SEG Measurement also probed the effectiveness of certain aspects of the course from an administrator's point of view. And they asked administrators to rank on a scale from 0 to 5 how effective various aspects of the course were, including teacher directions, professional development materials, ease of use, the sequence or the organization of the content, the instructional effectiveness, and ease of planning, right? How simple was it for teachers to plan their lessons and their classes? And overall, administrators ranked teacher directions and professional development materials and ease of use as the most effective areas of the program. And finally, another area we really wanted to learn about was student engagement. How well does Our World engage students? How well does it challenge them? And how well does the content relate to students' own lives? And the results from this part of the research were very promising. And on a scale of 0 to 5, teachers ranked each of these areas above a 4, a very positive result. This lets us know that students are engaged and interested in the materials, that they're being challenged appropriately, and that Our World's content is relevant to students' own experiences and their own lives. And there are many more findings in the full efficacy study report, but in general, we were very pleased to see that the results I've shared here reinforce that Our World is meeting the needs of teachers and students in the English classroom. And I'll turn it back over to Charisse. Thank you.
Thanks, Micah. And I actually got the microphone on this time. So we also wanted to share some of the quotes that SEG had gathered in their reports because they really aligned with what we have been hearing, which is very encouraging. So, for example, we heard from administrators that lesson planners were successful, right? And if you can see this quote here, the lesson planners are a very useful resource for schools like ours. And it goes on, but the idea is we wanted to create these lesson planners as fully articulated lesson plans that the teacher can just pick up and implement in the class. he or she doesn't have to stick to it, but it's a resource that helps them enact the curriculum in a consistent way across a school. And what we heard from administrators was that in fact helped raise the level of instruction across their institution. And of course, it's hard to go wrong with a quote like "the quality as good as it gets." And if we can go to the next one.
Great, thank you. So I thought I would just share a little bit about what the lesson planner looks like. So here is an example. You can then see what our world administrators mean when they say that the lesson planners are useful resources. So here, on this 2-page lesson planner spread, you can see that there is a full 2-page spread from the student book that is included with the answers to the exercises. But more importantly, there are fully developed lessons with step-by-step instructions and even teacher talk in blue. And this can really be helpful for novice teachers to know how to carry out an effective lesson for each page and activity in our world. There are also strategies that you could see on the side panel, Be the Expert, where there are strategies and formative assessment ideas in the side panel. And these are integrated into that specific lesson, but also those examples can help teachers develop themselves professionally with strategies that they can use in other lessons as well. So anyway, as you can see, these quotes from teachers say that our world makes it easier for me to teach, and our world is really thought out well and organized. By the way, when I went to Brazil and I was talking with teachers using our world, I actually came across a teacher who was very experienced, and she said that she actually creates her own lesson plans and doesn't really need a lesson planner. But she said that one day she decided to do an Our World lesson plan exactly as it is in the book, including saying the teacher talk in blue. And she said that she was amazed that the lesson went so well. And in that way, she recommended it for especially novice teachers who are not necessarily at the level to create their own lessons, to follow the lesson planner, and you can have a successful lesson with Our World. So that was something that we felt was great feedback about these lesson planners. All right, next.
So the teachers actually had quite a bit to say, including, I love it. But this one really resonated with me. I've been teaching for 9 years using many different sources. Our World for sure is the best. Or I love the grammar book and its self-explanatory grammar box. It's hard to do grammar in a way that teachers love oftentimes. And to get that quote back, I thought was a real testament to the work that the editors, authors did improving those grammar charts. And this one is probably the most important. Students love Our World. And that's important because when students really like the context that they're learning the language in, they're more committed to the materials. They're more willing to speak up in class, to engage with the activities. One of the people in the chat a little while ago was asking, how do I get my shy students to talk in class? And there are a lot of ways, by allowing them to work in smaller groups and talking directly to you. But really, there's nothing more motivating for any student in the class to want to say something is to give them content that excites them, that they feel engaged with. And so that quote in particular really stood out to me as being really important in driving success of this series, and more importantly, success of the students. And of course, students like the games inside Our World and have fun while learning. We specifically put the unit game in the grammar activity because grammar can get, pretty hard working, and we want them to love interacting with the language and have fun with it. So we did put the games in there to up the fun factor of grammar. And Joan?
I love how you said that, Charisse, right? Grammar can be hardworking, but we have to make it fun. Games was one way to make it fun. And another way is, of course, by using songs, which children love to sing. And so here is an example of a song from level 2, our world book, and it's about animals. And as you will see when you hear a part of this song, our world songs are catchy and fun to sing and practices the grammar and new vocabulary and context. So let's give them a sample of the song. Thanks.
Song. Activity 1. Listen, read, and sing.
Awesome animals.
A parrot is a bird that flies. It can't swim, but it can fly. A parrot is a bird that flies high in the sky. A monkey swings from tree to tree, tree to tree, tree to tree. A monkey swings from tree to tree. Why can't we? I want to be a monkey in a tree. I want to fly high up in the sky.
All right, that's just a sampling. And as I can see in the comments, yes, students love songs. Now, teachers who I've worked with also use these songs to connect to students' lives. So for example, students can not just learn about animals and learn the grammar point and sing the song, but they can also, as many teachers do, personalize the song. So they could create their own song, right? Like, Joni is a girl who swims. She can't fly, but she can swim. Joni is a girl who swims in the ocean. So you see, you can connect to students' lives and make the learning fun and expand the language. So in the next slide, you can see some of the quotes that we got from teachers. The songs are so good, particularly at the lower levels. It is so cool. They get to sing and dance while learning to use grammar and other language, right? As you notice, there are ways where they can show the motions, right? Bird that flies and that swims, monkey swings through the trees. So that also helps to keep your young learners active in the classroom. The last quote, the animal section, it's always a high energy class. Can and can't, the penguins can swim, they can't fly. They love this. So it's such a wonderful way to get students engaged with the new vocabulary and the new grammar. All right, moving on.
Thanks, Joan. As Joan indicated earlier, we're very fortunate in our world to have access to incredible high impact photos from National Geographic. And those photos, which open every unit, provide a context to bring the students into the theme and to have them think about what this really means to them. I particularly love this photo, and I think I would ask the students to tell me, what do they see and what do they think is happening? Here we have a man dressed in traditional garb in India, and we have riding on the back of the bicycle a young boy who's carrying a laptop computer. What does that mean to them? Do they see some differences here? How does it relate to their own lives? And so they're going to have a chance from this now to go into looking at what daily life looked like in the past and how it looks like today, and to have a chance to talk about that, and then actually to compare the past with their life now. These are not just pretty pictures. They are incredibly important photos with high impact, which draw the students into the content. And we know that from research that students who are more engaged actually learn more. They want to participate more. And those songs that Joan just went over, that song, obviously students will participate, but they can even participate in looking at a photo like this and thinking about what that means there, but also what it means to their own lives. And here's what one of the teachers said. I love the pictures. The pictures catch the eye of the students. They're very visual and very bright. And I think if you keep going through the units, you'll see that every one of these opening photos makes an incredible impact and draws the student into the themes of the unit. Next slide. And here's another one of those opening photos. Can anybody look at that seal and not want to either hug or pet that seal? Obviously, a photo like this will make an incredible emotional contact with our learners. And this opens up a unit which is talking not only how wonderful the sea is and the creatures and the plants and everything that live in it, but also how endangered it is because of particularly plastics, because of plastic pollution. And so they have a chance to think about what it could be like, but as they get further into the unit, they begin to realize that this beautiful scene is really very much endangered. And there are things that they can do to actually help make sure that these animals and plants can continue to survive. And a teacher from Vietnam said they find the real life pictures and videos very engaging because they relate and connect to them. I can't imagine how any child or any adult, including me, could not relate to this photo. And now, if we're going to now take a time to look at a video of Sylvia Earle, who is an oceanographer and a National Geographic explorer who has devoted her life to not only better understanding the ocean and what lives in that, but also in helping to create enough of enough of an impact that people really want to help do something about what's happening in the ocean. So can we play that video?
Now let's meet Sylvia Earle, National Geographic Explorer in Residence and Oceanographer.
I'm Sylvia Earle. I'm an oceanographer, explorer in residence at the National Geographic Society. I've had the joy of being able to explore many parts of the ocean around the world. Only about 5% of the ocean has ever been seen at all, let alone explored. It should be fun to go be an explorer, and every kid has the potential to be an explorer. The idea is to try to protect the blue heart of the planet, the ocean.
And so Sylvia Earle is so motivating. How is it possible that you would watch that and not think about maybe that you could do something to ensure that the ocean continues to survive and the animals within it? As a teacher in Malaysia said, the students love all the videos because they are real and they can relate to them. And here now is the final project in this unit on the wonders of the sea. And this little girl working with others has done a lot of research and to try to figure out what is it that she has learned about the sea, about the oceans, and about the role of plastic pollution. And take a look at what she was able to produce. She has a poster which she has brought together what she has read and learned in her research. Then she writes what she has learned. She pulls some wonderful photos. And then in the end, we have that wonderful photo of a seahorse who is on some straws. And she then creates a wonderful sign almost that you might find on the road that says no with a slash through it, and it's over the plastic straws. And she says, say no to plastic straws and sea animals will thank you. This is just a dramatic, wonderful way in which students are able to bring together what they have learned. And it provides a really nice balance between the skills of speaking, reading, and writing, which is something that teachers indicated they found very, very positive in our world. And then notice at the end, she has a chance now to say what she can do. Can she name and describe sea life? Can she talk about how we protect the oceans? Well, obviously her poster has done that. Can she talk about what needs to be done in the future? And then how to describe how things are different and how they could be different. So a very wonderful way to bring together not only all the content, but all of the skills that she has developed in the course of that unit. Next slide. And here's an example. We talked earlier about the phonics books, and just as I think Joan indicated, and several others have indicated, grammar can be quite boring. Well, so can phonics. Because of what it's trying to do, it's focusing on very, very small bits of language. But here's a page, 2 pages from one of the phonics books, is an early one. And notice how in the first activity, it's a bingo game in which they listen and they have to find whether F, B, G, or L is in the beginning. And then in the second one, whether those same sounds are at the end. And whoever actually finds the 3 then wins the bingo game. Then they have a chance to go on and listen to a chant and then actually chant and clap their hands. So they say, fun with my family, daddy drives a van. Big burgers taste good, have lunch by the lake. So they're, again, another way, kind of pulling on what Joan indicated was some of the values of songs now with chants. And then the next thing they do is they actually read a graphic story, which uses those sounds and have a chance then to actually listen once again to the sounds and circle them. So phonics doesn't have to be boring. It can be interesting and it can be fun. As one of the students said to us, the sounds of English are very engaging. Next slide.
All right. So what are parents and students saying about our world? And so here are some wonderful quotes. At the top, children love the books. I love the workbooks and the class lessons. I love it, from one student. The student also said the stories are very interesting. And the parents saying that the interaction online is very effective. But what really struck me was this quote saying the large amount of information in our world encourages the kids. And that stood out to me because there is this recognition that there is a large amount of information, right? We're presenting these cross-curricular topics. We're connecting to science and history and culture. It's a lot of rich content, but it's a lot. But that the parents said that it encourages the kids. And teachers I've talked to around the world have sometimes said that in the beginning, they felt a little bit intimidated by the amount of content and language in our world, but they said that they learned quickly that young learners are more motivated with this exciting content. One of the teachers I talked to even, sort of brought tears to my eyes because she said that using our world, she realized that kids can do more. They can communicate in English. They can learn language, even something that might seem like complex grammar. Why? When they're motivated to communicate about something, when they're engaged with the content, then they want to learn because they want to learn more and they want to talk about it. And so that particular quote really struck me. And I thought, yeah, teachers might be intimidated at first, but when you realize how motivated the kids can be, then it makes your class come alive. All right, Jodi, passing it back to you.
And here's another opening photo. And one of the things that makes National Geographic and our world so exciting is that students get to learn about so many other different countries, different cultures, different celebrations, different arts, and yet at the same time to focus also how this relates to them and to give them a chance to actually think about their place in the world, to make sure that they're proud of their own culture, their own country, their own celebrations. I think Micah has actually tried to go through all of the books to find out how many countries we include, but it's certainly very, very high and probably at least in the 80s. And what a wonderful way to expose all of our children to this broad world of ours, this exciting world of ours. And again, as I indicate, we always make sure that they also are very proud of their own place, their own country, their own culture, and that they celebrate that as well. As one student said, there are so many countries to explore. And what a beautiful way to explore. Take a look at that beautiful photo of Old Delhi in India, and that look at the young children who are playing to give you a sense again that this is a part of a growth. It's a traditional culture, but it's also children who are engaged in it. And so,
All right, I got my microphone back on.
sorry,
Yeah.
Cherise.
Celebrating the little things today. Yeah, so thinking back to our guiding questions that Micah went over when we first described this efficacy study. And we were asking whether Our World Second Edition was in fact engaging, effective, and easy to use. And SEG was able to summarize their findings for us in this way. So the results support the efficacy of Our World in developing students' core English language skills in speaking, listening, reading, and writing.
Also, the variety and amount of student activities and materials provided with Our World are effective in developing English language skills. And as Joan and Jodi have shown, the program is designed to give students a huge amount of places to go and think about and explore, and a wide variety of activities. So we're happy that SEG measurement found that this resonated with teachers and parents and administrators and students.
And really important to me was this next bullet. Our World is easy to use for both teachers and students. And, you know, just as important as a student enjoying the content and really engaging in it, helping facilitate that instruction, making the teacher's life easier so that he or she can be more effective in the classroom. And the better a teacher feels, the more confident they are, the more engaging their class will be, right? So it's just another way of making that classroom more engaging by making it the curriculum, the materials easier for the teacher to actually use in the classroom. So yay.
And somewhat related to that, another key takeaway was that the teacher's materials and tools positively contribute to students' language skills development. So as Joan, I think, mentioned earlier, teachers have a wide experience levels, right? There are many novice teachers, and to know that the teacher's materials like the teacher's book and the classroom presentation tool can sort of make it easier for them to help their students grow in English is a very important part of this study, and we're happy to see that the research shows that was a positive for teachers.
And finally, Our World fosters student engagement. And all of that together supports the premise that if Our World is engaging, it's effective, and it's easy to use. Next slide.
Next slide. Yeah. So thanks so much, Cherise and Micah, for summarizing that wonderful study and what we learned from it. And thanks to Joan for all of our explanation. And we hope that you learned a great deal about Our World. But now we actually have a little bit of time for questions. And I'm going to ask Emily if you could share any of the questions that are from the chat.
So we haven't had too many questions come in on the chat. There have been a few things about getting a sample, which I've directed folks to our rep finder. So you can contact your local National Geographic Learning representative where you are to get a sample. If you do have any questions right now, feel free to drop them into the Q&A box. We did have one that was pretty practical. It was a question about how to enhance students' creativity and creative writing. Any practical strategies that you all might have for that?
I can respond to that. I think one of the most important things that actually we do in Our World, but the teachers need to do in classrooms as well, is to make sure that there's a range of genres that they're writing, that it's not always writing what we eventually call an essay, but rather use the kinds of things that they be more likely to be using, make sure that there's some emails in there or some text messages. And also one of the things that we do in Our World is we make sure we never ask students to write something that they haven't been able to see a model, and actually not only to see what somebody else about at their level has written, but also to go through and analyze it according to just one feature. It might be the use of and but, or it might be the ways in which to compare something, but also just to focus on one thing that is key to what it is that they're going to write. I think we make writing just so difficult, so much more than it is actually. And I think part of the reason that we as teachers don't use as much writing as we'd like is we're kind of worried about how good we are at writing ourselves. I think the most important point is the more that students write, the better that they write. And to make sure that when we evaluate their writing, that we notice all the good things that they're doing, that we don't focus on just on the mistakes. We could bring some of those up, but keep that to a real minimum, pointing out one or two things that the student could do better, but focus on what the student has actually been able to accomplish. We need to make writing more of a fun activity and an activity in which we think that we could be successful. The other thing I would suggest is to allow students to write together. Sometimes just getting to write something with 2 or 3 people contributing and producing one bit of writing is more effective than asking students to write something on their own. And Joan, do you want to add anything?
Oh, I'll just say, I think, part of the question was about encouraging student creativity. And I think, really focusing in on your learners, finding out what interests them, finding out how they like to express themselves, and encouraging creativity, by connecting the students with the content and the language that you're teaching. So really personalizing that content, making those connections, focusing in on each student as an individual, and encouraging them to be creative and to express themselves in English in ways that they want to express themselves. That's all I'd like to add.
Thanks both.
Is there another question? If not, I was going to add one more thing.
You can feel free to add one more. We just have another question in the chat.
Oh, no, let's wait for the other. Let's go ahead with the other question.
I'm going to send this one over to Micah. It's asking about, have you analyzed data with the WIDA access assessment?
So all of our young learner programs are correlated to the WIDA benchmarks, and there is a specific website for correlations that you can go to search by program and find all of the information we have. And I'll put the link to that in the chat. So if you're curious to see how our world or any other NGL young learner programs align with the WIDA standards, you can and check that out for yourself. I'll put that in the chat right now.
Thank you. And Jodi, feel free, whatever you were just about to say.
Well, I was just going to mention one other technique that works sometimes very well, especially at the higher levels of our world. And it's what's called language experience, in which the teacher asks questions and the students answer, and the teacher writes what it is that the students are saying. And then they go back and they, as a group, they read what they have written and they make some suggestions on how to make it better. So it actually gets them involved as a group in a group writing activity. It also helps because they can see that there are many drafts. I mean, the first time you're probably not going to get exactly what you want. And so they have a chance then to look at it and together make suggestions. And then the teacher says, okay, now let's copy that off the board. And you can now maybe add a new ending to it or something of that sort. So they get a chance to work with the teacher in actually developing something to write.
There was one additional question I see. Is there any teacher handbook too for some tips or lesson plans? Actually, rather than doing a traditional teacher's book, we created the lesson planner, which are fully articulated lesson plans for every single lesson that includes lots of tips and ideas and background information on, say, the photography, so that you can be the expert about the content that you're teaching the children, including some background information on the grammar point that's being taught. So yes, there are lots of tips and lots of additional information and supports within fully articulated lesson plans.
That's great. Well, we're right around the hour. Faye, do you want to wrap it up?
Yes, absolutely. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Thanks for your participation, your comments in the chat box, all the relevant questions. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here and sharing all of your teaching experience with us. And again, thank you, Dr. Joan Kang, Dr. Jodi Crandall, Charisse, and Micah for this incredible session and all the relevant information about our National Geographic Learning best-selling series, Our World.